Okay, we are live and on the air. Yep, I think we're live and on the air now, right? I always get, it's like, am I live yet or am I almost live? Hey, it's Coach Manny, and it's like always exciting to be here with you. And we're always on time because time is part of what I try to teach my audience, in addition to selling, because to sell effectively, you got to be on time as well. I'd like to thank you all. We'll do a little bit of housekeeping here in the beginning, and then we'll get started on this. Might be a little different than what you've heard us do in the past. And those of you who watch me, hey, you see, I got my new glasses on. They're still a little turned on from where I was outside just before the session started here. But I'm excited to be here with you. Finally got the glasses to look better today. No, we were having a blast on a couple of those webinars with the wacky looking glasses. But you got to do what you got to do to see, right? We're here every Friday trying to bring you tools and techniques to help you be better and stronger and more effective and more successful at selling, because that's what we do. And that's what we try to help you do. So how do we get on this XY thing? I think is one of the big questions that people always ask us. How do you get on XY? What does this got to do with doubling your sales, which, is kind of what we push forward in all our stuff, because we are here to help you build your business, whether you are the owner, whether you're starting a new business, or whether you're just a salesperson, a sales executive, and not just the salesperson, because you are the people that rock the companies. We know that. But we're always here to try to help you. And so in a conversation with some people a few weeks ago, we started talking about that whole XY thing. And, why even more than X now, because the whole new buyer network and the why people are getting much more involved. And they were saying, Manny, why aren't you doing anything on that? And I remember that a good friend of mine wrote a book on one of those generations a few years ago, and she did a great job. And so I started doing a little research. And, when it comes to sales, there's some good stuff on retail, but there's not a whole lot for you all out there who maybe you're doing B2B sales out there. There's not a whole lot of information out there on how do I sell to these generations. Well, like always, people try to classify us. And, when I looked at Generation X and Y, I think one of the things it's hard to classify. And, people want to say, I don't know where I'm at, which one I'm in, because when I ask people, are you X or Y? They're not sure sometimes. And the whole research I went through out there and the stuff I looked at, let me pull up some notes here I have. And you may not agree with, excuse me, you may not agree with what I come up with today, because nobody out on the internet or in the other research I did agreed either. What exactly, it's not like, baby boomers. I think pretty well people agree that 1964 is the cutoff. And if you were born in 65, you're a Gen X. Okay, so we start there, but where do we end? Well, some people say 78, others 76, others 80, some people even as far as 84. But for our purposes today, we're going to say those Gen Xers are going to end in 1978, and Gen Y is going to start in 77. So if you're a 77, 78, you make your own choice. And I think you're going to make your own choice out there anyway. So that's as much as I got, 77 to 94, which means, the Gen Xers are at the old age, or at the high end, they're at 50. At the low end, they're maybe 30. And the Gen, well, that's not quite true, is it? Yeah. And then the Gen, let me back up a minute. Somewhere between 40 and 50, we're going to say the Gen Xers are, and the Gen Ys are somewhere 25 to 30, maybe somewhere in there. So, you have to, and other people call them millenniums as well. Other people extend it beyond 94. I'm just giving you what I got. That's why we had such an issue when we were doing the research here. We're like, what really applies here? Which one of these? How do we classify this? I was working with some people, and we really couldn't figure it out to that great detail. So how are we going to learn how to sell to these people and to this generation if we don't really know who they are? So we do the best we can. And one of the things that we're going to do here that we're putting together in the next few weeks is we're actually going to put together a session. We're going to bring in maybe 3 Gen Xers, 3 Gen Yers, and let them tell you, because I think that's going to be a much better event than me sitting here for 30 minutes on our Friday call trying to do it, because I'm not that good at it. But I'm going to share some interesting stuff we found, because I think it's important, and especially if you're out there trying to double your sales, which most of our listeners are, because that's what we're here for, to help you really take your business to the next level. So I just wanted to share that with you and kind of set that preface that I don't know who the Gen Xers and Ys are. I know 65 to 75, you could say they're X. And, anybody born in the 80s and 90s, you could say they're Y, but there's probably a crossover there. And then Generation Z, of course, coming too, but I'm not going there today because we're really talking about today is, all right, these 2 generations have some things that are a little different. And the number one thing we start with Gen X is the incredible, sophisticated, technical knowledge, which I think only gets even better and stronger and even more so in the Gen Ys. I mean, I was lucky because I grew up as a technology person. I was a computer programmer when I got out of high school. I was a computer technician in the Marines. So I was exposed to that. But most people my age and most people in the baby boomer generation are technically frightened. Is that a good way to put it? And, I've always dealt with that because we were training people, baby boomers, in how to use computers, and they were always scared. So this is a great generation. Technology, they know it, and they want to use it, and even more so in the Y than the X. Show me. And a lot of the stuff we've seen about the sales of the future comes up, and we're seeing it in some companies today. They're already starting to do everything through technology. No longer do I have to stop over for a visit. Our visits are done virtually through technology. Yeah, let's have a sales call. You're on your computer, or maybe you're on a bigger screen with 3 or 4 people. I'm on mine. We're doing we see each other. We see what's going on. And that's the way sales calls are done now. And that's different. And a lot of people are afraid of that. And we do these just like we're doing these Hangouts. I'm sitting here. I got an audience out there. I'm talking to a screen. I got no interaction. And, it's different. So, again, these people are very tech savvy. So you have to understand they want to see stuff using technology, and you can't fool them with what can and can't be done. All right. And they're immune to most traditional. Now, we're going back to the Xers here for a minute. Let me just concentrate on a few facts. And I'm just going to try to share some of this with you today. And I know I'm going to get a lot of feedback and over the next week, because maybe you don't like it, maybe you like it. And always remember, if you didn't get to see all this, or you don't get to see all this, the recording's always out on our YouTube channel, Manny Nowak. So get out, watch Manny Nowak, and you can see this and most of our other webinars. Also, if you have a point that you would like to drive forward, I don't know how much I'm going to get to chatting today, but if you have a point that you want to bring up, throw it up on a chat board, and we'll try to get it into the conversation, especially if I say something that you think, no way, Coach, you can't do that. And so I always like that help anyway, because sometimes some of the information I get is usually very good and very on top of it. But still might be controversial with what you're experiencing. So let's go to Generation X a minute. Immune to most traditional sales and marketing. So, the old way we sold, we got to think about new ways to do it. They've already been exposed to so much in their lives. Um, and the thing is, I think there is so much less brand loyalty in Generation X than there was with baby boomers, and even with Ys, who are a little loyal on some stand. But so what I'm trying to say here is on the brand loyalty, they're not going to buy because you're ABC, and ABC was bought by your parents and bought by everybody else, and they've always used it. They don't care. They're looking for something different. So this is good and bad. It's good because now you, as the salesperson out there, this opens up for you. Think about that. When you were selling against all that brand loyalty, people wouldn't even let you in the door because you weren't look at all the big brands. You weren't IBM, and you weren't Microsoft wasn't even there. You weren't IBM, and you weren't the big companies, so they wouldn't even talk to you. You weren't Anderson Consulting or one of the big eight at that point. But now Generation X will let you in the door because they're not as concerned. So put that into your pocket as one of those key elements. Brand loyalty isn't there, which opens up the door. So if you're dealing with a Generation Xer, you got a better shot at getting in the door. So a little bit more on these guys and gals at that generation. Most of them, were raised in one of two kind of homes. It either was a dual income or single parent homes. That's kind of where they came from. So I don't know if that puts them in a high or low income, but here's what's important. They know how to purchase. Now, a lot of baby boomers grew up where the parents did all the purchasing. And and I was a kid, I was different because I grew up in a single family home because my father died when I was very young. So I got involved, but most people in the baby boomers didn't get involved the way Gen Xers do. And Gen Xers were involved in purchasing everything from groceries to furniture to houses to cars, everything. They were involved. So they have great knowledge of purchasing. So again, whether you're selling to a new entrepreneur, a Gen X entrepreneur, or you're selling to somebody who's working for a corporation, they know how to buy. So it's different. So they're going to ask you those questions that maybe somebody who wasn't as involved in purchasing wouldn't be able to ask. We're used to those questions when we're dealing with a big corporation and we're dealing with purchasing. But when you're dealing with small businesses, which a lot of you out there sell to, these people know how to buy. And I don't want to spend all day on Gen X, so I'm going to wrap up with a couple other points here so we can do a little bit on why, do a recap, and set up for the panel, which we hope to have in a few weeks. And we're not necessarily going to have that on Friday. We may actually have that because I think I'm going to have to give an hour to that because I need some time to work with. These are the first daycare generation. It's mass divorce generation. Again, one of the other thing on Generation X, and again, don't get mad at me if you're a Generation X because I'm just giving you the research that I've found so far, and I'm going to do a lot more research because it's a hot topic. Skepticism, what's in it for me? This is the what's in it for me generation. And if there's nothing in it for me, am I sure I want to be here? They're also the best educated out there. Let's face it. If you're a baby boomer out there and you're sitting in on this call because you're trying to learn, you know that the baby boomers, Gen X kids, we wanted to educate them as much as we could and as much as possible. So that's kind of Gen X. And when you take those things into account, when you're trying to sell to them, let's remember that Technically wise, you got to show them they're interested in technology. If you have a product that is sophisticated technology wise, you can get a lot more interest. But if you don't know your product well, and you should always know your product well, don't get me wrong, you're going to get ate alive. Um, you got to sell a little different. So just banging the phones like we used to, bang, 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 may not necessarily get you in the door. Advertising really, I'm not sure it works that well with that generation either. All right. Now, let's go contrast that to why, because this is the generation that's really getting into the purchasing mode. And you know, one thing I learned online and doing a lot of this research was a lot of the stuff they have out there is really focused on retail. And we talk more B2B on this show. So how do we get there? So I'm going to try to focus some of this much more on B2B. All right. So Generation Y, number one, and again, don't get mad at me. These are just information. They don't enjoy purchasing. And remember, with stats and all this information, it doesn't apply to everybody because everybody isn't anything, but it's just generic. They don't enjoy purchasing. So again, if you're going in to sell a Generation Y person, you've got to what? They're not gonna. They don't really want to buy. They're not in a purchasing mood like the baby boomers were. So they don't enjoy purchasing. You've got to make it fun and comfortable for them. And we're going to show you that in a minute about how to do that. And we're also going to show you that one of the great companies out there that has been able to do the Gen Y selling is Apple. And we'll talk about that in a minute. All right, this is a generation that lives in the cloud. Whether it's media, entertainment, internet, they are so out there, right? Out there in the cloud and in that whole environment. They know technology even more than the Gen Xers did. And not just know it from the standpoint of how to possibly implement some of it, but they live it and work it. So when you go to sell these people and you're using a sophisticated method like this, as opposed to being there and you're doing stuff on the computer, they love it. This is where they're at. So you can, again, change some of your sales philosophy. If it's a Gen Wire that you're selling, it's perfectly good to do it on a computer. You don't necessarily have to take the trip out there and talk to them. Now, I've found an interesting fact, but I don't know, and you can buy this or not. They say they trust their peers first over their parents. But you know what? I'm not sure that goes across all generations. You know, I can relate that as a baby boomer that, nobody trusts their parents, right? So, but that's kind of one of the things, and maybe they're just closer with their friends, and that's kind of what we looked at Gen Y. Friendships are really at a high level. Now, not only don't they like to purchase, they hate to be sold. And in the sessions we've had over the last few months, we've always talked about you don't sell people. You let them purchase. And especially in Generation Y, you can't set up a sales call. You got to set up a purchase call. And what that means is you've got to let the people purchase, which means you give them, because these are big researchers, again, just like Gen X, you've got to let them see it. You've got to show them, here's some stuff, here's some facts, here's some information, bang. And I know I probably am going to get banged all over the place about this webinar about, well, that's not really how we act. That's okay, because some people in Gen Y may have better research than I have because they're living it. So they hate to be sold. So think about that. How does that fit into your sales model? They're heavy researchers. So I think a lot of salespeople used to at least be accused of trying to pull the wool over people's eyes or trying to do that. You can't do that anymore. And you can't do that anymore anyway, because anybody can research. But this generation already has the facts. In fact, if you're coming to a meeting, whether it's online or in person, you can pretty much guarantee they've taken your product, they've looked it up, they've researched it. They know as much as anybody about your product. And so they're not interested in you giving them a bunch of facts. What they're going to be interested in much more is, what can it do? What can it do? Very high expectations of customer service. So if you're in a company or an organization where customer service isn't at an extreme level, Generation Y is going to put you on the we don't do business with these people. And let's talk a little bit about what that means. It means Amazon. Look at Amazon, the service that Amazon does. That's what they expect, because a lot of them have grown up with Amazon.com and they want that kind of service. You know, in Amazon, I remember buying a laptop and I had it for almost a month and I didn't like it. And I said, can I send this back? It doesn't really work the way I want. Oh, yeah, just here, we'll give you a tag, send it back. No questions asked. Now, that's the kind of customer service we're looking for. Is that the kind of customer service that you're offering? Think about that in your organization. Very environmentally concerned, green generation, right? Very much so. So if you are trying to sell something or your product isn't quite up to par, you could run into some real roadblocks. You may have been selling to this company, or your company may have been selling to a company for generations. And all of a sudden there's a new buyer and the new buyer says, your product doesn't meet what I personally think is important, and I'm not going to buy it. Now, what are you going to do when you run into that type of situation? Think about it. I mean, that's something that maybe we haven't dealt with in the past, but especially if you're dealing to multi-generational family businesses or businesses that just have been around for a long time, and new buyers are coming in, especially young buyers in large companies. Guess what? I don't care how good your product has been. It's not green, and that may get you. So put that, again, on your list of things. Remember, we're just touching the surface today. Let me keep going. They don't trust advertising. And I'm not sure any of us trust that anymore, but you know, that was one of the points I found out there. Okay, so also Generation Y, they want events. They want viral video. They want connections to people. They want social media. They want to see what's happening. And what's that really mean? It really comes down to, let me find that point. How does what you have, how can I get involved? How can I get hands-on? How does what you have to sell make people's lives better? What's the benefit? What's in it for me? Maybe, but I'm not going to take it to that extreme. Let's talk about Apple a minute, because I am burning my time here. Again, I'm sorry. Half an hour just blows right by, and next thing I know, I'm out of time. But Apple does the best for this generation. And let's look at why. And if you haven't read Steve Jobs' book, his biography or autobiography, I can't tell because I think he died before it was done. One of the best books written in the last 25 years, business books. Get it, read it. Steve Jobs may have been a little out there in some things, but man, what a method Apple has. So anyhow, Apple does this real well for this generation. And here's look at what they do and learn. They've put out how people are doing amazing things with Apple products. That's what they show you. When you look at Apple, and this is why Generation Y is really getting into it, and you got to ask, how can I do that with my product? They're showing you people doing amazing things with Apple products. And I was thinking about that as it relates to my own product. You know, What are people doing amazingly with the stuff I teach them? That's what people want to see. Look at the phone, look at the watch, look at Apple created FaceTime. So even though you're on the road or away from home, you can talk to your kids and your wife. Those are things, and they show that, and that's what people love to buy. So how does what you have to sell make people's lives better? That's a real question. And so you got to ask yourself, and I don't care if you're selling what you're selling, ask yourself that question, because that's a hot button with Generation Y. And how does your product connect to others? This is a real fan generation. If you can get one person or a couple people in Generation Y to really like your product, chances are they've got a network, they've got connections out there, and they're going to broadcast that out, and that's going to get you a lot of business. Think about that. You want to grow your business, selling to Generation Y, they're going to put that out there. But be careful, okay? And here's the thing that you got to watch, because just the opposite can happen. If you aren't up to par, you're just going to get cut off. So that's very critical. And some of this stuff that I'm telling you here, I think is just so critical for good sales, period. So maybe Generation Y is making us step up our sales process to a whole new level, because all that stuff I'm telling you, I think that should be there anyway. I think a lot of that is just that important. So Generation Y, and they want to be engaged. Remember that. If you're doing seminars, or if you're doing a selling process, let them touch, feel, participate. That's what they want to do. And it's not just Generation Y. I like to do it too, and a lot of you out there like to do it. So think about that. Craft beers. Look at craft beers. They're taking off. Why? Because Generation Y loves them because they're different. And they're taking off because of what? Think about it. Look at that. That's something you can look at. How is craft beer being sold? A couple other things on Generation Y, probably. They are joiners. They are the Wawa kids, they call them, right? Because that's the first generation that, we stop in a Wawa to grab something. If you're in a part of the country there aren't Wawas, just gas station food. But yet they're still into organic food. They're into energy drinks and tattoos and piercings. If you don't like them, get used to it. Life goes on. Your job is to sell, not to judge the people you sell to. So what's next? I gave you, I think, a lot of information for you to think about. And what I would like you to do now is just take all that stuff and, if you want to give me some feedback and say, Manny, what are you doing? I don't buy that. Or this didn't, I'm a Generation X, or I'm a Generation Y, and here's what I got to say. Now, if you really are a Generation X and Y and you want to get involved, I'd love to have you on a hangout. Now, you can do this right from your office. We're going to bring in 3 Xers, 3 Yers, and I'm going to host that, and we're going to get you all to try to talk back and forth about, some of those issues of what makes you a buyer, or why you buy things a certain way. And so that's one of the things we're going to put up. So I'm really excited, and I hope many of you can get there. We're here every week. And we're going to start bringing you some things that are a little different, because we feel, that this is something that's important. And if you really want to double your sales, you got to have a vast knowledge of the things that are affecting your sales. And I think doing this seminar has taught me that Generation Y is making us step up our sales process, making us get a lot better at it and a lot more people-oriented at it. And so I think that's good for the game. I think it changes possibly how we get people to buy. All right. So we're not going to be salespeople in the future. We're going to be people who help you to buy. And that's the way it should be anyway, because we all hate that used car thing. Still, when people talk about salespeople, it's always the used car guy and gal. All right. I hope check out the social media sites. Check out my stuff out there. Check out our website. We got some new products on lead generation. Of course, we still have our double your sales process. And this whole generation X and Y will probably end up being part of the lead gen process as well. Wow, I'm out of time. It's Coach Manny. If you missed some of this, watch it on the recording, which will be available probably in a half an hour or an hour. Check it out then. If you've been on here, great. I'm happy you were here. Watch us. We're here every week at 12 noon Eastern time. I'm excited. It's been great. Hey, get out there. Have a great day and make this a better world each and every day. Coach Manny saying thank you.